It was the summer of 1994. That was just a few years ago for some of us. A land before time for most of you. Only something you may have heard about in stories. I was in the latter part of my elementary school days, and the church that I was attending at the time wanted to take us and do something fun for the summer, because if kids are doing something actively engaged in the summer, they're not getting in trouble. And so they decided to take us to go and see a movie. Now, I'd never been to a movie theater before, and so this was a new experience. And so we got our session sign. I got a little popcorn and a little cup of soda, which I had never had something like that before. I went in, I sat down in this theater, and I looked at this massively huge screen that was much larger than the little box 19-inch big screen TV that we had back in my living room, which is now smaller than the computer monitor that I use. But this was the big TV in the family room. I sat there and I was looking at the screen as the screen had darkened after the commercials and little previews. And as the screen illuminates, I see a beautiful scene of a sunrise safari with a flat-top African acacia tree way off in the distance, as I start to hear the sound of words I had never heard before. I find out are part of the Zulu language, South African language. And then as the music starts, I see a rhinoceros raise its head, and then through a series of different events, different animals start to raise their heads. And these animals were all different than the dogs and the cats and the frogs that I grew up with in South Alabama. I had never seen these animals except for in the picture books that I had. And then we see these signs walking through, and then I get to see a picture and a glimpse of Kilimanjaro and a cross. And then the words start to play in English, and it starts talking about this circle of life. The circle of life. And you continue to see all of these animals, and then as it crescendos into the chorus, then you see this picture of what we would later know as Pride Rock, and then you see and you follow this little blue bird. He swoops in and he lands in front of this Lion King as he dips down and bows low. The scene would then change, and you'd see this lion who would start to smile, which oddly seemed comforting, scary all at the same time. And then through the animals, you would see this old-looking creature walking with a stick and climbing up, and then would give this lion a great big huge hug. And then the lion and the monkey would look back at this lioness with a little baby cub that's sitting there curled up in her arms. The female lion, there's this look of new parental pride in their face. And then the little lion would turn its head to the camera with this big old yawn as mom licks his fur. And he would take his little stick and shake it and like a rattler, and would break open this fruit and rub the fruit juice on his forehead, grab the baby and walk to the edge of this, and then would present this newborn baby, and not throw him as some of the memes say. Present him to the animals as all the animals start to go up as they're cheering for this new Lion King. And the song would close out, and then there would go on throughout the movie, which would be this ultimate story of laughter and fun, betrayal and redemption. And toward the movie, when this Lion King dies, Mufasa dies, Simba takes the blame of this death and runs away into a far land where he meets these two unlikely friends, Timon and Pumbaa, who would teach him this new phrase, Hakuna Matata, which according to the song would mean no. It literally translates as there are no problems, which gives the sense of no worries. And this is something that I've always loved. It's one of my favorite Disney movies. It's one of my favorite stories. I love this Hakuna Matata. I love going through and listening to this one. And I love the idea of it means no worries. Because fast forward many years, that little 10 or 12-year-old boy that didn't know a care in the world learned about worry, would learn about anxiety, would learn about stress, would learn about pain. But this idea that there are no troubles or there are no worries is not something that's foreign to Scripture. And in our Scripture reading this morning, we read in Philippians chapter 4, don't worry about anything. And I was actually interested. I looked it up in the Swahili Bible to see if it Matata here, but it doesn't. And there's another phraseology that it uses here that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce because Disney has not made a song about it to make it easy for me to remember and pronounce. But it says, do not worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. This is the first step for beating this thing called anxiety. And oftentimes when I'm battling with anxiety, my first thought is not to pray. My first thought is to worry, to stress. In school, stress involved things like tests and did so-and-so like me, or was I going to get made fun of because of my clothes, or all this. The worries became, how am I going to be able to pay bills, and where am I going to get money for food, and are they going to like me? And then I became a pastor, and the worry and anxiety of going to like me never seemed to go away. But Paul is telling us to not worry, to not stress, to not be weighted down with care. The underlying Greek word here that's translated as not to worry means do not carry a heavy burden. Now that doesn't mean that we're not going to carry burdens, because life is full of burdens. But we give those burdens to Jesus by praying about everything. Now, if you're anything like me, I don't really pray about everything. I pray about the things that I think are important, or the things that I think that God thinks are important. But it says to pray about everything. Pray about the little things, like the lost earbuds that lost 37 times during the mission trip for Caden. Pray about the little things like the missing car keys. Pray about the little things like, how am I going to do on this test? But it doesn't just stop at pray. It says tell God what you need. Now, why should I tell God what I need? Isn't He all-knowing? He should know my needs before I ever tell Him. And He does. But we're still instructed to tell Him our needs, to let Him know the things that we perceive as our needs, and thank Him for what He's done. Now, I find it interesting that this phrase doesn't say thank Him for the good that He's done. Because sometimes it's easy to thank God for the good. Not so easy sometimes to thank Him for everything. To thank Him for that difficult person that I had to deal with. To thank Him for that seemingly unanswered prayer that he had. But once we tell Him everything and we experience, or we thank Him for what He's done, then we will experience the peace of God, which is contrasted to the anxieties of this world. But we have to give it to We like to hold on to it. This is my problem. I grew up in a house with my grandfather, grew up during the Great Depression, and you pulled yourself up with bootstraps, and if you had a problem, you dealt with it yourself. You didn't ask for help, no matter how bad it got. You just did the work. Don't be lazy, boy. It's very hard for me personally to pray to God about everything. Because that's not what I was taught growing up. I was taught you take care of yourself. A man takes care of himself and his family. Give everything to God, we will have a peace that passes all understanding. And not only are we going to have a peace that passes understanding, we're going to have a peace that will stand guard and protect us the next time something happens. When we learn to trust Him. I've preached this passage many times in more depth than what I'm going over now. I'm just doing a brief summary of what I've learned in this passage throughout the years. I've preached this passage before. I've sat down and counseled one-on-one with somebody going through anxiety and told them to trust in God, to learn how to do this. Now, we have teachers on this campus who teach you how to do things they know how to do. But on this mission trip, I learned that I am still anxious for a whole lot of things because I don't always give everything to God in prayer first. The trip started with a group of crazy-looking teenagers in a parking lot here in Milo, all wearing our Let Go, Let God apparel, getting ready to go on what was going to be an incredibly long trip. And yes, I'm actually not quite sure what Kylan is yelling and screaming about. Tyler was asleep before we started on this trip, and everybody is trying not to burn their eyes out from the intensity of the sun that I had everybody look into when I was learning how to take these pictures. We would travel up to Portland. We would meet Janaea and her dad, and then we would carpool the rest of the way up. We would drop off Kylan's car, and we'd all get in together and go. We would get to the airport or get to the hotel. We would stay the night at the hotel because we had an early morning. We had an early morning flight. We got up before the sunrise with all of our nice bags and luggage after a nice breakfast. Breakfast that included some rice, I guess, to prepare us for the trip. Paul was very happy about the rice. We would get on planes and do what kids do at an airport and just be bored waiting for flights. Oh, I'm so sorry, Janaea. No, I'm not. We would sit there and wait around for our plane. This day actually ended up being, just by circumstance alone, my daughter's 16th birthday, and telling the people of the flight, they actually gave her a dessert from first class on the flight, which was very nice. I wish I could take credit. It was actually Janaea's idea, so thank you, Janaea, for telling me to do that. I don't know if I even told Amber that it wasn't my idea, but thank you for that, making me look good. And then after a long flight, we would get to Tanzania, and I would be taught something new that I didn't know how to do, and that is how to do a 0.5. Did not know about that one, and so I was taught. And then I would later go on to take several of these things throughout the trip. But this is after a long trip. We're tired. We get into our van, which we will spend a whole lot of time on it. And I'm going to go ahead and just warn the mission trip kids now. I don't got a whole lot of good pictures of you guys. Okay, I've got a whole lot of these kind of pictures, so you're just guys are gonna have to deal with it. We end up getting to our hostel kind of late, and they had us some snacks that we can eat, and so we sat around eating some snacks. We would get up the next morning where we would sit, and every morning we would have worship, and we would have worship with before getting ready to go out each day. This is not the first day that we were getting ready to go out for worship, but we would get ready to go to church, where I would be at least a little bit more successful in this whole 0.5 thing, getting dressed, getting ready to head and for the church. But before we head to church, we had to get some food. And so this is just one of the samplings of the wonderful meals that we had. The deep fried banana, which we seem to go with just about every meal. The chapati, there's that wonderful orange, which we'll tell a little bit more about the story of that orange a little bit later on. Some greens, some peanuts, and different things, and some homemade juice. We would then go to the church, where we would learn that the church services were not nearly as planned as what we have now, and people would get up and be asked to do something very spur of the moment, to get up front and sing. This picture I thought was really cute, because this little girl, who was one of the elders of the local Seventh-day Adventist church who comes to support the school, was taking videos and making sure that she got videos of all of these Americans singing their songs, which she very much enjoyed. And And her dad would later tell me that it was one of her favorite parts of the service was to hear us sing. We would then also sing some more songs with Matthew sitting there playing the guitar. But then we got to, for the first time, hear them sing. This was where we would. This is the area where we would do the church. This was the drums that they played with what appeared to be, to me, was like the end of a vacuum cleaner hose. I think what the most impressive part to me was the guy beating on that drum and continually hitting it and it never falling off this desk. I'm still not entirely sure how they were able to do that. But they sang with such joy and with such passion, and it was so moving. And to hear all these different songs and to hear them singing these songs. After our church, after this, the elder of that local Adventist church ended up having a message for us. And then we started to mingle with them right after the church service, and this is when we start talking. Kylan is sitting there holding my little buddy Junior. This is actually Mike Musumbi's son, the head elder of my former church. My wife and I would our whole very close to them. We were there the day that he was born at the hospital, and he spent a lot of time with us, and he grew very attached to all of our kids very quickly. Of course, after church, we would line up and get food, and this was the food line that the students would go through most days. We got our food and went and ate together. And then in the afternoon, if you guys have been here for the week of prayer, you've heard the 1 kilometer walk. This is a picture of that 1 kilometer walk where they would go out on Sabbath afternoon. One Sabbath a month, they would go out and do what they called an acts of kindness, where we went and they would hand out stuff to people who were less fortunate. This man was a professor at the university, and the bags have soap, some stuff to do clothes, to be able to help them get through. This walk ended up being about a 3.5 mile walk, not a 1 kilometer walk. We would come back in the evening where we would do worship. You can see the lights starting to turn on, which was not always consistent. We had the power go out on us a couple in the middle of worship service, and it was just the power and a little bit of battery backup that would keep us a little bit of light in there. And that evening, Dr. Mike Musumbi would end up sharing us a message. This is the director of the Cherish Foundation and the one that had organized all the stuff on the ground for us. Before we got back, or when we got back, the kids all got together and started playing bullfrog, pankety, something, bouncing, and they played a game, and the kids all loved the game. They kept asking to play this game over and over and over again, and it was really, really fun to be able to watch that. And of course, because we were in Africa and they asked everybody to do something, they also got Mrs. Alder to get up there and share a few words, which she was not prepared to do. Dr. Smith got up and shared a few words, which he was not prepared to do. And they would often ask us to get up front, even though we weren't prepared. And it wasn't just us, it was their students who would be so embarrassed to get up front and try to say everything, but everybody still would get up there and do it, even if they were not prepared. And then Sunday we got together and we got the chance to actually tour the school itself. This is their illustrious library, where they keep all their books, and our students were looking through and comparing books, and they sat down and talked about what you were learning and what I was learning, and they were going back and forth and saying, well, hey, this is kind of cool, this is what we're studying. And they talked about physics, and they talked about biology, and they talked about chemistry, and they talked about geometry, and they talked about all of those wonderful things that all of you love so much, right? You guys love so much. We're going to keep it with that. We got a chance to explore the high-tech kitchen, and this is where they would cook all of our illustrious meals. And so a little bit different experience in our cafeteria, I think. And this was just another example of one of the meals that was popular there. This is the ugali, rice and beans. We also got some vegetables along with that. In the afternoon, that Sunday, we would go out there and we would play some football on a field that was probably not built for football. There was holes in the ground that one time I stepped in and I almost went down to my ankle. And Paul would end up scoring a goal. But of course, it's Africa, and sometimes you just got to play around the guy walking through the middle of the field carrying his burden with him. So they had to play around this person that just ended up walking there. And of course, not all of our students are sports fans. And so we had Moombek was trying to teach the girls something. We have no clue what they're laughing about here, but they were having a fun time and laughing about that. Some of our other students decided to sword fight in the middle of what they thought was Jurassic Park and trying to hone their survival skills. Later on the next day, we would go and visit the local clinic that was just around there, that was across from the school, and they were refurbishing their new building, which is going to be May 15th, a new ward. And then Monday we would start working, and we would start putting together and trying to build glass or put glass on the back of the school building, because they wanted us to start somewhere where it wouldn't be as noticeable. As they were learning to put it in, it wouldn't look so bad on the front, so they started on the side. They would later get on to, they would continue to do it, and this is Caden here trying to sit there and show his professional skills. And then this was them showing how to do it, and there was some kids that were giving more moral support than they were actually doing the windows itself, but everybody was trying. Mrs. Alder actually stayed with it and got quite good at fixing the windows. But after that, they got in, they had to learn how to paint, so we went into this room that was full of dust and mice and various stuff like this that would, I think, cause a little bit of some breathing problems later on for the trip for some of our students. They would also end up doing some cleaning, which Paul is doing a very good job here, and they wore the mask because it was just filthy inside of there. We should have cleaned first before we tried to do anything, but that's what it was. Later on in this same room, we would have to mix the cement by hand and then use various different means of trying to actually cement the floor down so they could use that room as a classroom. After we had learned how to paint, we started doing some painting on the outside, trying to make everything look new. Instead of replacing stuff, we just painted over all the dirty to make it, look a little bit better. And of course, after a long day's worth of work, sometimes you just get a little bit tired and you have to fall asleep somewhere. And it wasn't always the bed that people would fall asleep on. You just fall asleep wherever you were able to when you were tired. But in going back and forth, there was also another little ministry that we had there where we would lure kids to the van with candy and give them candy. And when a lot of them even get out of the vehicle and just start handing candy to all the little kids throughout there in their uniforms. We would go throughout the week doing the work, and there were some other things that we did during the week to get ready, which I'll talk about here shortly. But then we got to Friday, which was their graduation. Now, their graduation was a little bit different. They started off with a science fair, and they showed us some different ways. Some different things they had learned. They showed us how the effects of alcohol on the liver, the effects of smoking on lungs, the effects of doing different types of drugs and how they were bad. They had caught a frog to do a dissection, and so they did a live dissection right there with the frog they found, and with not any of the things that we use. They just used nails to pin it down. They used cardboard to try to get it at the right angle. After they cut open the frog, they then did some sutures on it, showing you that they knew how to actually to sew up somebody. And then this young man had built a cell phone out of scraps found around the school. And yes, that is a cell phone that worked. I actually took my phone, dialed the number, and called it, and had a conversation using my cell phone and his phone right there. He built 2 weeks outside of class time, and they go to school from 5, 6 o'clock at night. In addition to that time, he did that. Afterwards, they came in, they danced right into their graduation, and as kids had mentioned throughout the week, for those that were there, graduation started late and lasted an hour longer than scheduled, but it was a fun opportunity. I myself was asked to be the keynote speaker and got to wear my regalia when it was really, really hot, and sitting there all day long in all black regalia. It was a long day, but it was a good opportunity to be able to give out the diplomas for these kids. And our kids also blessed by singing our theme song, God's Masterpiece, for everyone that was there. And then we got into Sabbath, where I got a chance, where I was asked the day before to preach. And so when I was in Israel. And then Sunday, we went on safari. This is the place that we were getting ready to go. We would spend some time and going looking at animals. This is what the Jeep looked like. This was a really fun experience where everybody was looking to try to see something. Just to give you an idea of some, well, before I do that one, I got to tell you about the protective mama here named Janaea. There was a little baby monkey, and there was monkeys at the first place where we went to eat, and these monkeys are thieves. They like to steal food. And there was a little baby monkey that was eating the crumbs that was dropping from Dr. plate, and Janaea was trying to protect the monkey because all the older big monkeys would come and try to steal from the little bitty baby monkey, and Janaea would actually chase them off. I didn't put the video, Janaea, so thankful for that one, but there was a video of that. I have video proof of that one. Don't ask me for it later. But we would end up having such a wonderful and fantastic time. We got a chance to see a beautiful sunset the first night. Got to see some of the majestic animals there. This is wildebeest. This is one of the top 5. You can see some zebras in the background, a giraffe, which is always a fun animal to see, and of course, the Lion King himself, Mufasa. Maybe, I don't know. It's probably not. But this is, we got very close to it. And just to give you an idea of how comfortable these creatures are with vehicles, imagine having a lion sitting behind your back tire. You could really reach out and touch somebody. After we got through with our safari, we went to a Maasai village, which was a local people type, which they could jump really high. And this was just trying to show how high they can jump. So he probably got a girlfriend from that, because this is what they said they do in order to get girlfriends. Whoever can jump the highest would get the best pick of the girlfriends. I'm glad that is not an American culture, because I am very blessed. I don't jump very high, and I still have my wife. And so I am very happy with that one. I got a chance to hold some goats, some baby goats, and it was very cute. And it was a wonderful experience during this trip. But the thing outside of the animals and the safari and the work is the number of times where this passage, do not be anxious for anything, Hakuna Matata, was brought back to my mind. This guy, this is Haji. This is our driver, who really was the answer to several prayers that we didn't know that we needed. In order to go on safari, earlier in that week, I had to go with Haji, and I had to go to the bank, because they didn't tell us beforehand, but I had to pull out US dollars in order to be able to pay for the safari. The safari places will not take the local Tanzanian money. They will only take US dollars. It makes no sense to me whatsoever, but that's the way they did it. So I had to go to the bank to be able to pull out several $1,000s to be able to pay for the safari. And so we went to the bank. Very easy process. We went in the morning time. I went there. Lo and behold, found out that my debit card has my name Tom, and my passport has the name Thomas. And they said, as far as we know, you stole this card. You can't use this card to pull out money. And so we would go and spend the rest of the day in this bank trying to figure out how to pull out United States to use in Tanzania, and there was nowhere else to go, because you could only go to a handful of banks to pull out American dollars, because there was a shortage of American dollars. I tried to figure out multiple different ways about doing this. I called my wife at 2:30 in the morning U.S. time, trying to figure this out, and she got up and started working on this. By the way, if you were here during spring break and there was a day that my wife looked overly tired, that you can blame me, because she was on the phone with me for hours trying to help us get it figured out. We tried switching the money from one bank to another bank, all this kind of thing. Nothing worked. We got to the end of the day. I was frustrated. I was aggravated. But I'm like, this is a mission trip. God, maybe you're trying to teach me something. Maybe you don't want us to go on the mission trip. Maybe you don't want us to go out and see the animals, and you've got more work for us to do. I want to be open to whatever it is that you will have for me to do, because everything that we are trying to do is not working. We can't get my bank to communicate with my two banks to communicate with each other, because the card that I had with the bank didn't have enough money in it, and so they're trying to transfer money. They wouldn't let us transfer money. We tried all different kinds of ways, and I was on the phone. I was getting frustrated. I didn't have any internet because we had run out the internet on my phone, and so I was trying to use a hotspot. My battery was dying on my phone. My backup battery was at the hotel or at the hostel that we stayed at. I was just getting frustrated, and I'm sitting there, and Haji looks over to me and grabs my arm, and he says, "Hakuna, my friend, God's got this." And I'm okay, thanks. And I'm like, he's not a Christian. He's witnessing to me instead of me witnessing to him about the goodness of God and that God will take care of our needs. And I'm like, Hakuna Matata. Hakuna Matata. And then the passage here in Philippians comes to my mind. Do not be anxious about everything, but pray about it. And so I prayed. We got back home that night, and I shared worship, and I at the worship, or not even during our worship, I was just sharing with the kids, hey, we may not be able to go on the safari, because I didn't want to tell the kids, because all this work, all the money they raised, to tell them, no, you're not going to go on safari, to go see all these awesome animals and do this, and kind of as a little, just a little thank you for all the work that you've done and all this kind of stuff. And, they had raised money to go on safari. That was part of what we talked about in the raising of the funds. And I was going to have to tell them, sorry. I was talking to my wife how we could possibly maybe submit the funds back or whatever the case was. But I'm like, I'm just going to give it to God. And then for those that weren't here during the week, Andrew actually shared in his talk that when I had, he stopped and he prayed right then and there. And then I got a message from my wife saying, hey, everything in the bank worked through. We were able to get the money transferred from one bank to another bank. And I'm like, well, God, I guess you had a reason for it. So we'll go back the next day and go back to the bank and do it. The next day comes around, and we have two of our students who are sick. And we don't have medicine for them. And so those two students get in the back of the vehicle with me, and we go back to the bank, in and out of the bank in like 30 minutes. We have everything, not a single hiccup, not a single problem happened. Then we were able to go and find the medicine, because we didn't have access to all the things that we needed to get medicine for. And so we were able to get some cough drops. We were able to get some ibuprofen and Tylenol. Was able to get a thermometer, and one of the students that was temperature for like 102.5. And God took care of our needs before we knew that we needed the medicine. And if I would have just sat there and said, okay, we'll just come back tomorrow, I've been fine. But no, I'm bullheaded, and I don't trust God, and I don't go to God in prayer with everything. And I had to learn Hakuna Matata. If I go to God first, then I don't have to be worried about it. I don't have to be anxious about it. A couple days later, the orange I'd tell you another story about, Dr. Smith had eaten the orange, and the fibers from the orange had gotten stuck in his esophagus, and he couldn't eat, swallow, or drink anything for a day and a half, 2 days. He ended up having to go into the doctor, and so we called our contacts to try to get a surgeon to be there to be able to do a scope to go down and find out what's going on, find out why he couldn't drink, find out why he couldn't eat. Our points of contact ran out, and then Haji called his sister, who is also in the medical field. They were able to get somebody that night to go in, and they found out that it was the orange fibers got stuck in his throat. They pulled it out, and he was fine. Again, God used this person to answer a prayer request that we didn't even know that we were going to have. Because we had insurance, we had plans if something happened, but it was God answering the prayers before we even did it. And what I loved about Dr. Smith and this whole attitude, he's like, it's okay, we'll be fine. And I was trying not to be worried, because I'm the pastor. I'm supposed to be the one that's keeping it all together, and I'm just sitting there barely holding it together in the night after everybody goes to bed. I'm sitting there just like, God, why are we having these issues? This is meant to be a growing experience for these kids. I'm trying not to break down in front of the kids myself. And then God's trying to teach me something. By the way, us older folks, and we need Jesus too. We need to be reminded that God is here for us too. But not only does God answer the big prayers, he answers the little prayers too. We were getting ready to leave the safari for the second day. And Mrs. Alder had to see an elephant. God, you got this. Okay, I've learned, got this. We'll see an elephant as we're leaving the park. Because last time I was here, we went the same route. We saw elephants. An elephant actually came up and used our vehicle to scratch its back. We left the park. Driving, I just prayed, and I'm like, God, I know we're not in the park, but it would be really neat if we can see. Hey, wait a minute, Haji, stop! I see an elephant. Like, no, you don't. Thanks, Tyler, for the boost of confidence. That was him that said that, by the way. So we backed up, the other vehicles behind us, trying to figure out what's going on, and then Daodi, who was our local guide that was helping us, he sits there and says, there's an elephant behind the tree. You see the tree branches moving. And they're, nah, it's not an elephant. And then Paul's like, I think it is an elephant. I believe Pastor Tom. Thanks, Paul, for that boost of confidence. And lo and behold, within just a few minutes, we got to see an elephant in all of its majestic glory right there on the side of the road, an hour out. And it means no worries. We have to learn to trust God in the big things and in the little things. A lot of times the kids are like, are we really making a difference? Are we really making an impact? We made enough of an impact that we're getting ready to, before, actually another prayer request. Janae has said she wanted to hold a baby left Africa. I don't know why that was a thing that she wanted to do. But we get a call one of the days before we're ready to leave, or get a text message, and we get told, it's like, hey, Mumbek, the headmaster of the school, he had a baby girl at 5 o'clock this morning. We didn't know she was pregnant. Didn't know this was even a possibility. That afternoon, about 12 hours after the baby was born, God answered another prayer, and Janaea got to hold a baby. And the really cool thing, for those who haven't been at Week of Prayer that haven't heard this already, that baby's name? Janaea. The headmaster named the kid his child after one of our kids. Did the mission trap have an impact or not? God allowed us to be used in such a way that it impacted them enough to be able to. He named his child. Now, he told me, and I asked him, I went and pulled him to the side. I'm like, man, you're joking, right? Because he's a funny guy. He makes some jokes. I'm like, you're joking. He's like, no, I'm dead serious. My wife's name starts with a J, and so all of our kids' names begin with the letter J. And my wife says, well, what should we name her? And he's like, how do you like Janaea? And then she's like, I like it. And they named their baby this. There's a baby Janaea running around in Africa. Well, not running around. It's only about a week and a half old. She's not doing a whole lot of running at this age. But there's a little baby that's named after one of our students here because of the impact that we were able to make. There's a lot that goes into planning a mission trip. And there is a lot of anxiety around making sure that when you take 10 people's kids that are not yours, well, 9 people's because one of those kids was mine, into another country, there's worry, there's anxiety. Things could go wrong. But Hakuna Matata. When we go to God first, when we focus on God in the good, the bad, we bring everything to Him in prayer, He will take care of us and He will give us a peace that passes all understanding. God cares about you. God loves you in the midst of your problems. God loves you in the midst of God loves you when you think nobody sees you. God loves you in the little things in your life. You to talk to him. He knows the problems you're going through. Talk to him. He knows the good things in your life. Talk to him. And the peace that passes all understanding will be yours.